We're also following other breaking news out of Nashville, where lawmakers are expected to vote on a proposed map that would reshape the congressional districts across the state. The special session was called last Friday by Governor Bill Lee after President Trump was pushing lawmakers to create a Republican seat following that landmark Supreme Court ruling that struck down Louisiana's majority black congressional district. Under this map approved by President Trump, Shelby County will be divided into 3 different districts, and District 9 would be completely reshaped and moved to much of Middle Tennessee, even as far as Bedford and Moore counties. Our own Lauren Turman is live in Nashville and will bring us the very latest on the vote as soon as we know.
Properly seconded. On the bill, Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to further continue. Before I say that, across the nation, Democrat majority states have maximized their partisan priorities through the redistricting process. For example, in Illinois, Donald Trump won 88 counties in the presidential election. There's 102 counties in Illinois. They divided the city of Chicago and its suburbs into 14 separate districts, maximizing their partisan advantage. In Massachusetts, Senator Harris, Vice President Harris, won the popular vote by a 25-point margin. Tennessee, President Trump won by a 30-point margin. Massachusetts has 11 electoral votes. 10 are Democrat, 1 is Republican. New Hampshire has 10 counties.
All right, that was a live look inside the proceedings. State Senator John Stevens speaking, but we want to send it back out to Nashville and ABC 24's Lauren Turman, who has the absolute latest on what's been going on at the Capitol. Lauren, what do you have for us? Have we learned anything right now?
Yes, Kevin. So just a couple of minutes ago, House Bill 7003, which is the congressional redistricting bill that was really being considered here, passed just a couple of minutes ago. And now you can see all of these protesters out here. There are a couple of Democratic representatives out here as well, chanting with some of the protesters, talking about how much all of their support has meant to them over these last couple of days here. If you were with us just a couple of minutes ago, as some of the Republican lawmakers were walking down the stairs, there were several people over there booing them and shouting things like shame. And really that has been consistent here over the past couple of days here. Everybody has consistently been rallying in the hallway outside of the Senate and House chambers here and just talking about how much the support of the community has meant to them. Now let's really get into the facts here and a little bit more of the history behind why this is so important and historic right now. Within the House floor session, there were several representatives who were talking about making amendments, trying to propose amendments and bringing them up to really talk about things like transparency of who has drawn this map, the public seeing the new map, and also a written explanation behind it. Now, if you'll remember, this proposed map that has just been approved in the House and is now potentially awaiting approval in the Senate chamber is specifically dividing Memphis and Shelby County into 3 distinct districts. That is District 5, District 8, and District 9. District 9 would completely reshape as we know it and extend from a little bit of Shelby County into parts of Middle Tennessee. And that is really important because now with a 9-majority Republican congressional map here, you also have the only Democratic district, which was District 9, being completely erased in this. Now, the last time redistricting happened in Tennessee was back in 2022. Then an 8-1 Republican majority was then created out that map, and that map was redrawn at the time. This is a really mid-election cycle, and of course, in the middle of a 10-year span. This happening right now is very historic, and you can see all of the passion on people's faces right now as they are continuing to protest and as they are continuing to make their voices heard alongside several of these Democratic lawmakers, as I mentioned here earlier. And they said they will be out here for several hours continuing to make their messages known and continuing to make all of everything that they have been doing over the past couple of days known, really arguing for transparency, arguing that this redistricting map is something that silences black voting voices. You can see Representative Antonio Parkinson right there hugging one of his constituents, really talking to people, meeting with them at this time. Several of these lawmakers have been doing that here today. It's really been inspiring to them. They've been telling us over the last few days. And so, of course, they have told me that they will continue to be out here. And they said that no matter what happens in this vote, as we just heard the House vote and what eventually will happen in the Senate vote, they said that this is just the beginning of a movement for all of them out here. Now, we will continue to monitor exactly what happens and specifically continue talking to a lot of the people who are out here and what they're having to say. We do expect for there to be a Democratic caucus press conference at some point later today, and of course we will bring you the details on that as soon as we have them. But for now, live at the Tennessee State Capitol, I'm Lauren Turman, ABC 24 News.
All right, Lauren, thanks for that. Appreciate all the hard work you've been putting in there this week. Look forward to hearing from you again coming up later. But let's take a look back at how this all started. This special session was called just last Friday by Governor Lee after President Trump pushed lawmakers to create a new Republican seat following a landmark Supreme Court ruling. In that ruling, the court struck down Louisiana's majority black congressional district, saying the map relied too heavily on race, as voters tended to favor Democrats, thereby affecting the balance of power in Congress. The move weakens the Voting Acts law, which primarily ended the discriminatory practices against black voters prevalent in many states. We are going to be back with more after weather.
That he is dividing the district into 3 new districts.
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, the Shelby County is divided into 3 separate districts.
Senator Lamar.
Thank you. Who specifically drew these district lines?
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Johnson and I are the sponsors of the legislation.
Senator Lamar.
Did you draw the lines when you all came together? You drew the lines.
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Senator Johnson and I are the sponsors of the legislation.
Senator Lamar.
So when you were drawing the lines, were you unaware or aware that you were slicing African-American voters in Memphis, Tennessee into 3 parts?
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This proposed map divides Shelby County into 3 districts. It maximizes the Republican chances of carrying all 3 districts.
Senator Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back in 2022, the public had an opportunity to weigh in on the redrawing of maps. Why was the public not included in this new redistricting that we're debating today?
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The public was provided, the maps were made public as soon as we had them in the Judiciary Committee yesterday, and they were placed on our website at 9 a.m. yesterday as well.
Senator Lamar.
Thank you. Are you aware that the candidate qualifying deadline has already passed and people are currently running for this seat?
Senator Stevens.
Mr. Speaker, I couldn't understand the question. If the senator could please repeat her question.
Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I repeat my question. Are you aware that the candidate qualifying deadlines and the withdrawal deadlines have already passed?
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The governor called us into special session to redraw our district lines. Through that call and through other pieces of legislation, the qualifying deadlines have been addressed through the special session.
Senator Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll close with this. I rise today not only as a senator, but as a daughter of Memphis, a daughter of the South, and a beneficiary of the blood, sacrifice, and courage of black people who fought for the right to vote. This is one of the most consequential votes any of us in this chamber will ever take in our lifetime. Not because of lines on a map, because of what those lines are designed to do. Erase representation, dilute black voting power, and tell Memphis that our voice only matters when it is controlled. So let's stop acting like this is ordinary redistricting. There hasn't been a new census data. There is no emergency for the people. The only emergency here is for Republicans in this chamber saw a political opportunity after a Supreme Court decision weakened the Voting Rights Act that they have moved immediately to attack black voting power. This map does not reflect Memphis, it diminishes Memphis. It slices our city into pieces and stretches our communities hundreds of miles away to places of different needs, different economies, different histories, and different lived realities. You cannot take a majority black city, fracture its voting power, and then tell us race has nothing to do with it. Racism does not become less racist because it's called partisan. This is the same old playbook with new legal language behind it. When black people gained the right to vote, they put in literacy tests. When we organized, they used poll taxes. When we built political power, they used gerrymandering. And when they are now, today in 2026, we're calling special sessions. Our ancestors did not march, bleed, get beaten, jail, and die for this legislature to use a court ruling as permission to gerrymander their grandchildren today. Black bodies lay in rivers and in fields all across this country because they dare to speak out for representation and the right to vote. And today, in 2026, we are standing here watching elected officials try to take our representation away, and those sacrifices made that possible for people like me to stand here and have a voice. I never imagined, as the youngest African American to ever serve in this body in the history of this state, that I'll be standing here debating the dilution of political party of my city and my community. I never thought as a mother of a child so many of you all love that you refer to as baby senator, that my baby will have less rights than his grandmother. This is an insult to Memphis.
All right, you just took a live look in at the proceedings. State Senator London Lamar speaking out against these potential maps. We're going to send it back out now to our Lauren Turman, who I understand has a live interview. Lauren, what do you have for us?
Yes, Kevin, I'm here with Representative Antonio Parkinson. Representative Parkinson, we're just going to get right into it here. This vote was just taken in the House. We saw all of you all standing there looking on for one another. Your immediate reaction to this?
This is the most egregious action that this body has taken in the 16 years that I've been elected. And it has a profound effect on the black citizens of the state of Tennessee. And when I call for secession from the state of Tennessee, I'm dead ass serious about we need to start that conversation about removing ourselves from this body that does not appreciate what we deliver to the state of Tennessee. Memphis is the largest contributor to the tax coffers of the state of Tennessee. We subsidize almost 75 or 80% of the members' counties that are on this floor. And for them to keep taking a sledgehammer to our people is unacceptable. And I ain't with the shit, and our people ain't with the shit. So I say, secede from the state of Tennessee now. Let's get our attorneys and let's get them together and let's start looking at how we can begin this conversation and start making a move to disassociate ourselves with such an entity that mistreats our people.
And so is that the next steps really for the House Democratic Caucus here? A lawsuit? Legal action has been something that has been questioned quite significantly in both the House and Senate. Is that the next step?
Legal action will immediately follow this vote. And so we're waiting to see what happens in the Senate. And if it comes out of the Senate, then the legal action will start immediately.
Earlier, I saw you hugging one of your constituents. Of course, there's hundreds of people out here in the hallway. What does it mean to you to have this much support, and specifically for people who are saying they don't want this redistricting to happen?
You know, this is a statement from the most powerful people in the most powerful building in the land, making an action statement against his own people and against the representation or the self-determination of an entire black community, which is Memphis and Shelby County. Additionally, almost 50% of the black population in the state of Tennessee lives in Memphis and Shelby County. So to say this is not about race is some bullshit. So we are going to do everything in our power to ensure that we get what we need from the courts, and also we need to start having the conversation of secession. How long do you stay in an abusive relationship?
Thank you so much, Representative Parkinson, for your time. We appreciate it. And of course, we will be following all of these updates. We are expecting a press conference from the House Democratic Caucus later. So as soon as we hear more details about that, we will, of course, bring it to you. But for now, live in Nashville, I'm Lauren Turman, ABC 24 News.
All right, thanks for that, Lauren. You just heard again from State Representative Antonio Parkinson some strong words, including potentially threatening secession from the state of Tennessee. So certainly this is a legal process just getting going here. We're going to send you back now inside the Senate where these proceedings are continuing.
I can actually agree with you. I've demonstrated courage. I've given you a playbook what it's like to stand strong. You can do it too. Don't let the president threaten you with a primary. I'm getting primary. If you are a good senator, a race shouldn't mean nothing to you. The people are going to stand with you. The people are going to go to the ballot box and vote for you. But to cheat, finish line further back after the race has already started, is immoral. It's immoral. And I have, if it's any day that I have the opportunity to speak to your heart and your mind, I hope it's today. I hope that you sit at your desk, put your phones down, and really take in what you're doing today. Take it in. So as you vote, and you may have the votes, Memphis will not be silent. You have awakened a sleeping giant today. A storm will come today. The repercussions of your decision will be felt for centuries. Your vote today will forever be carved in the history of this state. That you will potentially vote to take the vote away from an African American community because you couldn't earn their vote on your own. So today, hands off Memphis. Earn Memphis. Don't cheat and take it away. Do the right thing. Have some courage. And vote no on this bill with me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Lamar. Leader Ackberry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield for questioning?
Sponsor yields.
Mr. Speaker, when this body considered the 2022 congressional maps, was race a factor in determining the boundaries of the 9th Congressional District?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation modernizes Tennessee's redistricting process by removing racial data from the map mapping process entirely.
Senator Stevens.
I've responded.
Leader Ackberry, I'm sorry. Let's try to keep those doors closed. Leader Ackberry, I apologize.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just going to restate that question. I couldn't quite hear the answer. Yes or no, when this body considered the 2022 congressional maps, so in 2022, to the sponsor, when congressional maps were being considered, was race a factor in determining the boundaries of the 9th Congressional District? It's yes, no, or I don't know. It's okay to say you don't know, but I'm asking about those specific maps.
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, this map is what we're talking about. This map, proposed map, modernizes Tennessee's redistricting process by removing racial data from the map-making process entirely.
Leader Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Did you consider keeping Memphis intact as a single community of interest when designing these maps?
Senator Stevens, did you hear the question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I did not hear the question.
Okay. I'm going to
Senator
ask,
Ackberry.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ask the people outside if you could please just keep it down for a little bit. We have some very important questions we need to ask about this legislation, and I would like that to be able to proceed. So thank you all for being here, but we really do need to ask these questions. So I will repeat it. To the sponsor of the legislation, Mr. Speaker, was the consideration of keeping Memphis intact as a single community of interest considered when the maps were drawn for the legislation that we're talking about at hand right now?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The maps were drawn to maximize the potential Republican partisan advantage by winning and having a chance and opportunity to win all 9 congressional districts for the Republican Party.
Leader Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it sounds like in the pursuit of making sure that this could be a Republican district, it was not considered whether or not to keep Memphis intact. My next question is, did you attempt to avoid dividing Shelby County?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I request that members not put words in my mouth. What I said was the maps were drawn to maximize our partisan advantage exactly like Virginia did when they divided Fairfax County not a month ago. They divided it into 5 separate congressional districts, maximizing their partisan advantage, which is exactly what we did in these maps. We divided and redrew the lines to maximize our partisan advantage.
Leader Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I request that when we ask members questions, they actually answer them instead of providing something totally separate. My next question is, did you evaluate whether the districts that you've created with this map are compact?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, the maps were drawn to maximize our partisan advantage.
Leader Ackberry.
The goal of this legislation is to support the National Republican Party's ability to maintain the majority in the United States Congress. It's a razor-thin margin. Our voters sent us here to draw these maps as part of our duties. That's part of our duties, to maximize our partisan advantage for the priorities that Tennesseans have overwhelmingly voted to support. Strong national defense, support for our military and veterans, border security, tax relief for working families, like no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, permitting reform, pro-growth and pro-family policies. That's what we're voting on today, is to ensure that a Republican majority can enact those policies.
Leader Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a few more. To the sponsor, did you use 2020 census data to draw these maps?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Leader Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the sponsor of the legislation, are you aware that census data does not include partisan information?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're required by law to use 2020 census data.
Leader Ackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple more questions, and I do appreciate the members' indulgence. To the sponsor, are you aware that there are candidates that are on the ballot right now that have already filed and have started spending money and have hired campaign staff and have placed ads based on these current districts?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I responded to Senator Lamar when she asked that exact question, I deferred to the other pieces of legislation that we've already passed, which changed all those deadlines, and respond to that.
Senator Ackberry, Leader Ackberry, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will just say this to my colleagues in this body. There are moments in this chamber where we are required to make very big decisions that are bigger than maps, that are bigger than how we normally do business. This is one of those moments, because what is being proposed right here is not just a redrawing of districts. It is the breaking apart of a people. It is the fracturing of a history. It is the dilution of a voice that generations of people bled for, that marched for, that prayed for, that died to build. Memphis is a city of sanitation workers that proudly proclaimed, "I am a man." Memphis is not an accident on a map. Memphis is the balcony where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Memphis is the place where he took his last footsteps. Memphis is sacred ground in our civil rights story, in American history. And now, barely a few days after the Supreme Court weakened what remained of the historic Voting Rights Act, this legislature rushes to carve up the very community where Dr. King gave his life, fighting for dignity, economic justice, and the rights of the oppressed. A city that is 64% black, a congressional district that is 61% black. And somehow, we are supposed to believe that the dismantling of this district has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with those voices being allowed to have power, to be allowed to remain loud, and to matter. John Lewis was famous for saying that democracy is not a state, it is an act. Well, what kind of act is this? Because this doesn't feel like democracy. Search in your hearts, you know it's not. It feels like erasure. It feels like telling black Tennesseans that even when they play by the rules, when they build political power lawfully, constitutionally, peacefully, collectively, it will be taken away the moment it is inconvenient. And let me say this clearly, Memphis is not Williamson County, Memphis is not Pulaski, Memphis is not a puzzle piece to be stretched across this state. Our communities are real, with shared histories, shared struggles, shared schools, shared churches, shared culture, shared pain, shared dreams. You cannot tell me that the communities surrounding Mason Temple have more in common with distant counties that were responsible for the founding of the Ku Klux Klan. You cannot tell me that they have more in common than the neighborhoods that have surrounded this area for generations. You cannot tell me that this is just about political representation, partisan politics, while actively breaking apart one of the most historically significant black political communities in Memphis. Stacey Abrams once said that voter suppression is not about preventing people from voting. That's not what this bill is doing. That's not what these bills are doing. It's about making people believe their voices don't matter. And that is what is happening right now. Because people watching us in this chamber, they have to ask themselves, does their vote matter? Does their community matter? Does their history matter? What do we say to children in schools when we teach them about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., while simultaneously serving in legislatures that dismantle the political power of the very community where he died? What do we say to elders who survived Jim Crow and poll taxes and literacy taxes and literacy tests and intimidation and segregation? What do we say to Johnny Turner, who had to count the bubbles in a bar of soap? What do we say to those who marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, who were jailed, who were in our courthouses, and who even gave their lives? Do we tell them we've still learned nothing? The people that came before us did not sacrifice so that their representation could become optional. They believed that America could become what it says it always has been, And today, as we sit in these chairs, we're being asked that very question. Do we believe that America can be what it's always said it's going to be? History is watching this vote. I know y'all are going to get impatient and get tired of hearing us speak, but history is watching this vote. Not just Democrats, not just Republicans, history. And one day, after we are no longer in these seats, when people have completely forgotten our names, they will look back on this time and wonder what happened when there was an opportunity to protect the voice and votes of Black Memphians and what people did. I know where I stand. I know where Memphians stand. I stand with Memphians. I stand with democracy. I stand with the legacy of John Lewis and the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King. I stand with the late Barbara Cooper. I stand with the late Lois DeBerry. I stand with the late Thelma Harper, with the late Maxine Smith. I stand with Johnny Turner. I stand with Sarah Lewis and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker. I stand with my grandmother, Clara Macklin. I stand with all those who have sacrificed so much just to watch, in the matter of 3 days, the entire voting bloc in power in the Memphis community be dissolved against the wishes of the people who live there, against the wishes of the people who represent. And for what? I stand with the people who sacrificed and gave their lives because they believed in the fundamental basis of democracy. One person, one vote. So I urge you all to really consider the true nature of what you're doing. It's not pleasing one president or one senator or one governor who wants you to do this. It is taking away the voice of Black Memphians. And when you had an opportunity to do right, did you block the door for Ruby Bridges? When you had an opportunity to do right, did you beat people back on the Pettus Bridge? Or when you had an opportunity to do right, did you vote to make sure that those Black folks in Memphis who believe in this state, who pay their taxes, who work just like everyone else, has a right to be politically represented as well by folks who share their interest and who will advocate for them on a federal level. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield my time to Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Leader Ackberry. Senator Yarborough, let's have a little order. Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sponsor of the legislation has indicated his intent to divide up the population of Shelby County and distribute it amongst 3 different congressional districts, and has consistently insisted that the rationale for this was done without consciousness or even really awareness of the racial demographics of Shelby County. It was entirely about partisanship. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not actually a partisan gerrymander of Shelby County. The purpose of when you partition a county from a political gerrymandering perspective, the purpose is to optimize party performance. So you would think that you would carve up all of the most heavily blue precincts and divide them amongst 3 different congressional districts. But that's not actually what happens in this map. This map divides the most heavily Democratic precincts among just 2 districts. Districts 5, which is the one that goes to the north, and District 9, which is the one that goes across the Mississippi and Alabama border. And almost none of those truly heavy, those are the districts, all the precincts that voted 70% or 80% for Democrats, they're all in those 2. The districts that go in, the precincts that go into the 8th district are all swing districts. And I was wondering, if the purpose was to maximize partisanship, why, rather than splitting the most Democratic precincts amongst 3 districts, does this map split them amongst 2?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, the map was drawn to maximize Republicans' ability to win 9 congressional seats.
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the maps that are in front of us clearly don't support that. So, as we're drawing across the state, this map does not adhere to compactness or political subdivisions. You can do anything you want. But District 5 gets a portion of Shelby County that's 80% Democratic. District 9 gets a portion that's 70% Democratic. The portion that goes into District 8, pretty much a swing district. And that's not how you do partisan gerrymandering. If you were paying somebody to partisan gerrymander and that's what they gave you, you would fire them. Let me ask a different question. Why does this map that we are considering here today treat the black Democrats of Memphis so differently than the white Democrats of Memphis?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, this proposed map maximizes the ability of Republicans to win 9 seats in the upcoming midterm elections.
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That was not my question. My question, Mr. Speaker, is why does the map before us treat the black Democrats in Memphis, Tennessee differently than the white Democrats in Memphis, Tennessee? Like, there's no partisan difference between those populations, Mr. Speaker. The difference is their racial makeup. So why are they treated differently?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Yarborough is assuming things that he believes I know. And I will say again, the map was drawn to maximize the Republican chances to win 9 congressional districts in the upcoming midterm elections.
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the sponsor is unaware, as he says, of the racial makeup, let's talk about this for a second. So, District 9 takes a population of approximately, I believe, 220,000 residents of Memphis. They are 70% black. And that's the district that goes into Tipton County, up to Lake County, and across the Kentucky border. District 9 takes about 270,000, roughly. I don't have the actual data. We tried to recreate the map, and I think we did a good job. But around 270,000 citizens of Memphis, and about 70% of those residents are black. But District 8 takes 440,000 citizens of Memphis and Shelby County. 27% of those are black. 72% of the white population is put into one district. 75% of the black population is carved into 2. Now, we are being asked to believe that it's just the luck of the draw, just happenstance that happened. That's what we're being asked to believe. You're asking us to believe that the political leadership of this state was in a room with maps, working with an attorney who's worked on the last several decades of redistricting. This didn't occur to anybody? That's more embarrassing than claiming not to know. So let's get this straight. If you're a black Democrat in Memphis, you got a 75% chance of being in one of two districts. And let's talk about what those districts are. So in the southern one, the District 9, you get to connect into Fayette County, drive across Highway 64, all the way till you get to Pulaski, Tennessee. And you take a little track up north, go through Bedford, go into Columbia, and up to Williamson County. And the lion's share of the vote and the growth in this district is a suburb of Middle Tennessee. So that's one of the districts. The other significant chunk of black voters goes into a different district. It goes through my hometown of Dyersburg. It goes up Highway 51, through Covington, up through Dyersburg to Lake County. It takes a right at the Kentucky border, goes all the way to Clarksville, then it comes back down south, goes to Hohenwald, and then goes into having the same exact majority be in charge from Murray County and Williamson County. That's what happens to the majority black Democratic voters. Now, the white Democratic voters, they get to keep having Congress. They might not win the election. Their favorite candidate might not win, but the congressman still lives in their town. They can still get issues resolved when they have them. That's what we're doing. It's an insult to the intelligence of the people in this room and an insult to the intelligence of the people in this state to claim that there is no way, that there was no knowledge or awareness of the racial impact that I just said. Come on, Mr. Speaker. How could we be unaware of it? Look, I am not claiming to know what is in anyone's heart in this room. But what I will tell you is that if I was trying to racially gerrymander Shelby County, Tennessee, I think you'd be hard-pressed to improve upon what is in front of you. Because what it does is it creates two districts where the black community is racially, geographically, and politically isolated from power, from access. That's what it does. But for white Memphis, we keep following traditional redistricting criteria. That's 8th district's actually relatively compact. You can drive from Germantown to Jackson. We don't disturb any of the political subdivisions. City of Lakeland, that's kept intact. City of Millington's kept intact. City of Bartlett, Arlington, Lakeland, all of them. We don't, those are no splits there. I think there's a small, 95% of Germantown's kept together. In fairness, they do split Collierville, but the almost exclusively white portion of Collierville above Highway 72, that's the portion that's in the 8th. The more diverse portion of Collierville, that gets to go to the 9th district and take the Highway 64 to Pulaski. That's what we're doing. And so I have heard people claim that this map is colorblind. It is colorblind only in that it sees in black and white. That's what it does. And just because the Supreme Court has issued this ruling and people have it interpreted as sort of not just a permission slip, but a requirement to go dismantle majority-minority districts, that is not what the Supreme Court said. That is not what our Constitution allows. Because what we are claiming, what are we doing here, is we are trying to dress something up in political language, because that's what Justice Alito's opinion in Calais says. If we say we're doing it for partisan reasons, then we can get away with it. Well, Mr. Speaker, we have been playing that game in this chamber for 150 years. I'm sure there are people who, when they proposed the poll tax, said it was for raising revenue with no racial intent at all. And the degree to which this type of project has been aimed at this community in particular for the last 150 years is shocking. So in the 1870s, Memphis first elected black members to their city bodies. By the end of that decade, in 1879, this body, we revoked their charter, and they were a state-run taxing district for the next 15 years until we had changed their voting laws so that they couldn't actually elect African-American members. In the 1880s, they actually elected representatives to go serve in the state house. In 1889, we changed those rules too to make sure that those were at-large elections that African Americans couldn't win. In the early 1900s, we created, in the name of good government, I believe at the time, the commission form of government, which also ensured that no African Americans would be elected to local office in Memphis, which empowered the Crump machine, which ran Memphis for years. But when the black community, which was delivering most of Boss Crump's votes, stood up to him, there was a reign of terror, state-sanctioned violence to crack down on that power. We can go forward to the 1960s when Baker v. Carr was issued. We got a command to redraw the districts, and we redrew them like we're doing right now. We created one white Republican district, and then we drew the two sections of African American Memphis in just to make sure that they didn't really have an effect. We're just filler for the rural West Tennessee districts. When Harold Ford Sr. won this district in the 1970s, it wasn't drawn for him. It wasn't majority-minority. He won a majority-white district. It only became majority-black because we basically allowed massive white flight during school desegregation and the creation of alternative school districts. You can keep going. Once you actually elect, Memphis is electing black rep leaders. We changed the annexation laws. We changed to make sure that the cities didn't grow and to allow independent cities to exist. In the early 2000s, we passed an unconstitutional law to let all of the white communities in Memphis break away and create their own special school districts. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, we in this body, we eliminated where we allowed the state to override the decisions of the locally elected school board. We put the locally elected DA under state supervision. We said that the highway patrol, instead of the Memphis police, can enforce the streets. And every step along the way, there's been a neutral justification. This is about safety. This is about education. It's about partisanship. But the project's always been the same. We've done some bad stuff, but we've done some great stuff in this chamber too. Let this be one of the days that we do great things. Do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Yarborough. Senator Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Look up. Look at the gallery and look at the people who drove here from Memphis, who drove here from Chattanooga, from Knoxville, from Clarksville, from every corner of the state, to stand in these halls and to beg us not to do this. These aren't partisans based from somewhere else. They're not paid protesters. These are Tennesseans, teachers, farmers, veterans, grandmothers. They came here on a Thursday. They've been here all week because something about this is wrong enough to make them get in their cars. How do we look them in the eye and not recognize their humanity? You represent them too. Every single person in this gallery and in the halls is your constituent, not just mine, yours, because the controlling party in a supermajority has the most responsibility to these people, not the least. Power is not permission to stop listening. In the last presidential election, nearly 40% of Tennesseans did not vote for Donald Trump. That's close to 1.2 million people. They pay taxes, they send their children to the same schools, they serve the same military. Under this map, the map this body may adopt, those 1.2 million people will have not diminished representation, not reduced representation, zero. No congressional voice at all, none. 9 congressional seats, 9 Republicans, not because 9 Republicans represent Tennessee, but because 9 safe Republican seats is what this map was engineered to produce 1 week after the Supreme Court ruling cleared the legal path to do it. And that's not a democracy. This is a map drawn by not incumbents, but for incumbents in the service of one man in Washington who is not a Tennessean. This special session was not called because the people of Tennessee asked for it. There were no town halls, there were no hearings, no public comments. The governor was called by the President of the U.S., and within days, we were here. I believe that we work for the people of Tennessee. And I think the other side of the aisle maybe believes that we work for Donald Trump. I say that not as an insult, I say it as an observation about what is happening to this chamber right now. We obviously see our jobs differently, and Tennesseans deserve to know who is being served. I want to make sure that this body understands that this bill isn't just maps, it's not just provision. For more than 50 years, Tennessean law has required that when district boundaries change, voters must be notified. Mailed notice to their home. And this law has been in the books since before most of us were old enough to vote. This bill repeals that requirement. We're not just redrawing the map, we are making sure people don't have to be told that the map changed. The state's own coordinator of elections, a Republican appointee, sent a memo to all 95 counties telling them this. Tennessee's 9th congressional district was not drawn by accident. It was drawn because for most of this country's history, Black Tennesseans were locked out of political power. By law, by violence, and by design. The 9th district was a recognition of that history, an acknowledgement that representation matters, that it has to be built. This map cracks the 9th district into pieces, distributes those pieces among surrounding Republican districts, and calls it redistricting. It's not redistricting. It is not redistricting, it's erasure. Our colleague from Shelby County told us he wants to make Memphis matter with 2 T's. Well, we've gone and made Memphis matter with 2 D's. And we've made Nashville matter, and we've made Chattanooga matter, and Columbia, and Murfreesboro, and Knoxville matter. Every city in this state that has watched this happen this week without notice, without being asked, is matter, and they should be. We talk a lot in this state about values, what we want to pass on to our children, what kind of people we want them to be. So I want to ask, what does this teach them? What does this teach our children? It teaches them that when you have enough power, the rules don't apply to you. That laws can be repealed in the middle of the night if they're inconvenient. That fairness is negotiable. That you change the rules when you're winning to make sure you keep winning. We call it cheating when children do it on a test. We call it bullying when someone uses their size to take something from somebody smaller. We call it stealing when someone takes what doesn't belong to them. But what do we call it when a supermajority uses a one-week special session to take away the only congressional representation a community of color has had in a generation? I call it the same thing. I just think we're supposed to know better. Sometimes this place feels like it's a game, and it's not a game. These are real people. These are election workers, they're poll officials, they're voters who will spend the next weeks dealing with the consequences of what we do today. And there are real candidates who've already qualified for their districts. The state's own finance division puts the cost of implementing this, as I said, at over $12 million. And make no mistake, this is going to be litigated, and the Supreme Court ruling that cleared the way for this map was decided 7 days ago, and the lawsuits, I'm sure, are already being drafted. I know the people on the other side of the aisle love Tennessee. I am not questioning that. But I am saying we are all on the same team, not the Republican team, not the Democratic team, but the Tennessee team. We are all on the Tennessee team. And that team has a responsibility to leave something worth having for our children. Bless you. And I do not understand how making it harder to vote, how erasing the representation of 1.5 million people, how repealing the notification requirements to voters and not telling them their districts has changed makes any of us more trusted by the people that we serve. You cannot build a livable future on a foundation of disenfranchisement. I look at these people in the gallery and out in the atrium, and they are not our enemy, they are Tennessee, and we work for them. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and to everybody out there who came here today, who took the day off, who found childcare, who stood in these hallways for hours, I want you to know I see you, Tennessee sees you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Senator Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I begin today, please keep this in mind. These are my reflections of us. This is my reflection on me. I want to talk about hypocrisy, and I want to talk about civility. These are my notes. Instead of writing a speech last night, I paced the floor and I called around. My brothers and sisters from Memphis were doing the same. I wish I could just get up and say ditto to my colleagues. Senator Ackberry, Senator Lamar, they have grown up listening to their ancestors talk about the era in which blacks were treated different from whites. Senator Yarbrough got up. He's an excellent lawyer. He did a good job. Now, I'm a lawyer, but I was down there as a public defender, then in private practice representing defendants in the Criminal Justice Center. Now, I believe in that. We heard from Senator Campbell and her colleague from Nashville. Senator Oliver will be following me, and I hope that you can learn about her. It's a lived experience. We've all expressed it. So when I got this bill, I thought, wait a minute, this is from the governor, the call of the governor. There's no court order. There was no outcry from the public. No legislator called this. So I read the bill and I said, well, this is a bill that is about redistricting, but it's on the back of Memphis. It's on the back of Memphis blacks in eliminating their representation into districts where they will be 32% black. Not enough to have a majority vote to get a seat at the table. That's what's happening. Now, how do I know all this? Why is this on, especially Memphis, in the black community. Look who's here. Look who showed up to support them, just like my colleagues have shown up, whether they're from Memphis or not. They show up, they're supporting the black community. I see them all out here, the protesters. You have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of the news. You watch the news. You watch your phones. You know this is based on the black community. You're calling home at night and talking to your spouse. She wants to know, he wants to know what's going on. Come on now, you hear it, you know exactly what's going on. So I said, now Sarah, all you can control is your one vote. This is the most important vote that you will ever take. You're going to live with this vote the rest of your life. You can spin it, you can come up with justifications, but don't reflect to me that you're being hypocritical. Not saying you are. But in my opinion, two things I despise is a hypocrite, and I really believe there should be a separation of church and state. That doesn't mean you can't come in here and talk about the Lord. I can talk about the Lord. I can talk about how I live at the foot of the cross. I can say those things to you, and I respect it, but you got to live. You got to walk what you talk. I want you to remember, do like me. Tell yourself, now let's don't be a hypocrite. Let's don't go get with your friends who are going to tell you, it's all right, we're going to spin it this way, we're going to spin it that way. But I don't like to talk about church and religion in here because I think that that's personal. Sarah, don't be a hypocrite. That's what I tell myself. But I also talked about the civility. And for me, some of you all don't know this, but I was working for my aunt. Yes, you know I'm from a political family, and she was in the Senate. And I can remember a very young lieutenant, well, at that time it was Representative Randy McNally, had two of the cutest little girls, and I remember them as being blonde-headed. They'd come in that office, Annabelle and Randy McNally, they got along, they were civil. They didn't have a hard time. They could even talk across the aisle. I can appreciate that. And I appreciate, at this time in my life, looking across that civility. Just like I can, one of the best things that ever happened to me from across the aisle, I was first elected, Senator Bo Watson sends me a text. Now, I don't know how he had my number. I don't think we'd even been speaking in the halls. His office, we were in the War Memorial Building. He had a different office. But I had been around East Tennessee and in a small town newspaper, as best I can remember, there was an article, and they tried to get me to talk against my Republican colleagues. And I said, I've been there, I'm new, but we're civil. We're really civil. Bo Watson sent me a note. I really appreciate you characterizing the legislature as civil. I really appreciate the other courtesies and the civility. One of the best ways to describe this, when our former Senator Mike Bell was chairman of the committee, we were sitting up there, and sometimes you don't realize how you're talking. Mike Bell pushed back that seat along with Senator Gardenhauer. We were on break. They said, Kyle, step up here. I went, oh boy. I stood in front of them. They said, now Kyle, we're going to show you the respect. Quit saying, I'll make this brief. You talk as long as you want it to. And then one of us said, but we're not voting with you. And we have a different plan. We think different. They didn't spin it. They didn't act like hypocrites. I don't want to act like a hypocrite to you all. I've got plenty of my own matters to clean up. But I'm showing up for Memphis. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want us, all of us in here, to be that way. I want to reflect my moral, my my religion, now this is just the concept to let you know how I think and why I'm voting no on this bill. You talk about religion, how you're going to honor God, but he said love your brothers and sisters. Treat others as you want to be treated. We've got to live with that no matter how we spin this bill. Here, you're one of them too. You can't just get with them as a group and explain away, justify why you're voting for a bill that we call redistricting that's on the back of black people. Yes, it is. And you know there's a feeling of Jim Crow's popping his head back up after all these years. All that these people fought for, all that you've heard from my colleagues, they've lived that experience. 10 to 1, you all haven't, that are on the other side of the aisle. But it's real and it's there. You are getting ready to tear apart the fabric of Memphis. You're going to tear up our economy. You're going to tear up that health care, all those issues you voted for in health care. You're very aware of Memphis. You're very aware St. Jude has a high population of sickle cell anemia. You care about that because you voted to try to help it. Didn't affect you. Send some money down to Memphis. So you are aware of the black population. Some of you have lived there and gone to school there. Some of you come and ask me, now how's Memphis? What's it like? High population of black? Most of you didn't grow up in these small towns that understood. One of my best friends is in the house, and he said, don't try to tell me how to be a black man. You haven't walked in my shoes. Now, he meant that sincerely. He said, I said, well, how can I show up? How can I be supportive? Do the right thing and don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't act and get up here and talk about your feelings for the Lord. Don't be offensive to God and get up here and talk about that. Then you turn around and treat his brothers and sisters if they're less than. You're going to have to go home and you can justify what you're doing. Oh, I didn't realize we were dividing up a black population. Yeah, you did. Yes, you do. You come down there and enjoy our music, our cuisine, our way of living. Oh, you like it. As Lamar said, if you're in control. Go ahead and split up our economy. We're part of the state that you live in. Don't be bringing your kids down there to the zoo anymore because we won't have that available for you because we won't have the money. Because blacks are the biggest supporters. Don't come down there and talk about how you support the second greatest corporation in the world, FedEx, when you are dismantling the black community. No, none of you want to walk around in an era of Jim Crow. Think what you're doing. You are on a slippery slope of turning back the hands of time. I said, Sarah, you don't control them. What are you going to do about living with yourself? I said, I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I'm not going to do that. I greatly appreciate the civility. I come from a family, we like building government. Those were our Sunday talks. What's what you told your kids? What are you going to tell your kids? They're old enough. Oh, they're out of the house. You don't have to deal. Well, you got to deal with yourself when you lay your head down at night. You're treating your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ wrong. So if you're for Christ, don't be offensive to God. We don't need to be praying on the street corner. That's why I don't think we ought to talk about it in here. You're intruding on somebody else's religion you don't understand. Don't be offensive to God. Don't bear a false witness. He is offended when we say we love one another. Oh, except when it comes to being in human power. Then we're going to set our religion to the side and vote differently than you say that you're following God, and he's saying, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm hurt. This is hard. I thought it'd be fun to build the communities. I can remember when Frank Clement appointed Ben Hooks first judge. I can remember Ben Hooks coming to dinner a few years before Annabelle died and had dinner with him. I can remember as a little girl in Virginia, my mother, the Southern Belle, the youngest of Frank Clement and Annabelle, oh, brother, she called Frank Clement brother, oh, brother has just appointed this most impressive man. I was taught to love your brothers and sisters. Not only was he impressive, his wife was too, little bitty firecracker. But Frank Clement reached across for talent that built this community you sit in today. He made laws that govern how you behave, how your children behave. You're going to be a hypocrite, Sarah, today on your vote? Just be civil. Let everybody vote. Are you going to go home tonight and think about the men and women, children you've hurt? Well, you got to live with it, Sarah, so, watch your vote. I want to show up for Memphis. I can't vote for something like this when we know exactly it's the black population. Not only did you divide our community of interest, you almost perfectly put 32% in each district. Don't tell me you don't know about Memphis and that we're predominantly black. Of course you do. I know about Knoxville, Kingsport. I know about the rural areas. We know about each other. The black population in Memphis is equal to you. Vote your conscience.
Thank you, Senator Kyle. Senator Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart, but with ice in my veins. There are people watching today who are descendants of people who were beaten on bridges, jailed in courthouses, murdered in churches, not for committing crimes, but for trying to vote, for trying to have a say in who represents them, for trying to be counted as full human beings in a democracy that was built in no small part on the forced labor of our ancestors. Those people are watching today, Mr. Speaker, and I want them to know, if you are watching, I hear you, I see you, and I feel you, and I will not be silent today on your behalf. We have come to this special session like it's business as usual. There is nothing normal about what we are doing this week. Nothing normal about what we are doing today. What has bothered me the most this week is we have a body predominantly made up of people who will never know what it's like to have your rights taken away. You will never know what it's like to struggle. You've never known what it's like have to have the talk with your son because of the laws you passed prey on black boys. How to act when you get pulled over by the police. You'll never know what it's like to have the conversation with your daughter because her hair grows a little different out of her head like your daughter's. And I have to tell her, don't let nobody touch your hair. That is our crown. You will never know what it's like because it's always been given to you. You've never had to struggle to be seen, not as 3/5 of a human, but as a full person with self-agency in this country. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I know most of you speak to me in the hallways. I've gotten to know some of you, and I know you go to church on Sundays. I know you love your families just like I do. And I know you believe you are good people. And that is precisely why what I am saying to you right now matters the most. Because good people, people who go to church, people who love their families, people who believe they're good, have throughout the history of this country done deeply, profoundly wrong things to black Americans. And they told themselves it was about something else. They told them that it was about economics, heritage, party, patriotism. It was never about something else. And today it's not about something else. I want the record to be absolutely clear about what is happening today in this chamber. 1 week ago, the Supreme Court of the United States in Louisiana versus Calais fundamentally rewrote Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The same day that decision was handed down, within hours, United States Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee urged this body, this legislature, to convene and redraw our congressional maps, giving orders like she's already the governor. Governor Lee, at the behest of Donald Trump, called us back into this special section just 2 weeks after we just adjourned to do something this body has never done in the history of this state. Without a court order, without a census reapportionment, without a single legitimate legal trigger. So let me say that again. There is no new census. There is no court order. There is no legal obligation that required this body to convene this week. The only thing that changed in that Supreme Court removed the last legal protection standing between black voters in Tennessee and this supermajority's naked ambitions. And you moved within hours. I'm sure Daddy Trump will be proud of you. Now, this map is not just morally wrong. This is constitutionally vulnerable. Under the Arlington Heights framework, which even the Calais majority did not disturb, courts assess intentional racial discrimination in redistricting by examining 4 things: the historical background of the decision, the sequence of events, departures from normal procedure, and a pattern of decisions affecting a particular group. So let me walk you through each of those factors as they apply to what this body is doing today with these congressional maps. First, the historical background. In 2017, not that far long ago, Memphis moved the statues of Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, and Jefferson Davis from public parks. Memphis residents used a legal mechanism to transfer the land to a private nonprofit because this legislature had passed the Tennessee Heritage Protection Act to make removal impossible. And what was the legislative response to black Memphians removing symbols of white supremacy from their own city? This body proposed making the removal of Confederate statues a felony, putting mayors and cities at criminal risk of enacting the will of the majority black constituents. In 2018, the Equity Alliance, a black woman-led organization that I helped co-found, registered thousands of new black voters in Memphis alone for the 2018 midterms. The Shelby County Election Commissioner, administrator, initially refused to process the voter registration forms. A court ordered them to continue processing them. And what did this legislative body do in response to Black Tennesseans registering to vote? The Secretary of State proposed House Bill 1079, criminalizing third-party voter registration drives with a $10,000 civil penalty and a Class E felony, targeting with surgical precision the organizations doing the most voter registration in Black communities. In 2020, young people, including now State Representative Justin Jones, occupied the Legislative Plaza outside this very Capitol for 62 days, demanding the removal of the Nathan Bedford Forrest bus right out here in the Rotunda. And what was this legislative body's response to young Black Tennesseans exercising their First Amendment rights? This body convened a special session in August of that year and made camping on state property a Class C felony. 2023, Representative Justin Jones and Justin Pearson went to the well to protest in their districts a mass shooting at the Covenant School. And what did this body do for that? Expelled them. 2 Black members, one of them from Memphis, Tennessee. 2024, Tyree Nichols was murdered by Memphis police. The Memphis Shelby City Council put in ordinance to make sure they protected people from traffic stops. What did this body do? We overturned the Memphis city ordinances. And then just last year, this very same sponsor of this congressional map introduced and passed legislation to dismantle the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, an agency born directly from the Civil Rights Act of 1965, an agency whose foundational purpose, whose entire reason from existence was to protect Black Americans from racial discrimination. Gone. And this year, during this regular session, just a couple of weeks ago, this body voted to take over the Memphis Shelby County School Districts, the Memphis Light, Gas, and Water Utility Board, and the Memphis Airport Authority. Institution by institution, board after board, agency by agency, systematically with surgical precision, removing the interests of this cohesive community, Mr. Speaker. I asked my colleagues, does this pattern have a name? Because in constitutional law, it does. The Supreme Court calls it evidence of discriminatory purpose. It is a pattern of targeted legislative backlash against the political and civic process of Black Tennesseans. Second, the sequence of events. The Supreme Court issued Calais on April 29th. Marsha Blackburn calls this session within hours. The governor convenes us within days. No legal analysis, no public hearings, no input from Shelby County residents, no expert testimony on alternative maps. In the entire history of Tennessee, this legislature has never, not once, redrawn congressional maps between apportionments without a court order. Not once, until the moment federal protection was removed. That sequence of events is not political inconvenience. Third, the pattern itself, Mr. Speaker. I represent Nashville, Davidson County, a county with a sizable Black and Latino population. In 2022, this legislature cracked Nashville into 3 congressional districts, splitting Black and Latino neighborhoods along lines that ensured no single district would have a majority-minority population capable of electing a representative of its choice. That was the first crack. Today, we are watching the second crack. Memphis Shelby County, a majority Black city, is being cracked into 3 congressional districts. And here is the connecting tissue that makes this a pattern and not a coincidence. Because with this new proposed map, my constituents in Nashville are having their lines redrawn again. A second time. Not because anything changed legally, not because a court ordered it, but because the geometry of silencing Memphis requires adjusting the geometry of silencing Nashville. You cannot crack Memphis without moving Nashville's districts. And so you are. The sponsor's entire argument in Judiciary Committee was, we are drawing the map this way at this appointed time for partisan reasons, to get a 9-0 Republican delegation. But here's what the sponsor cannot explain. Why does achieving partisan advantage always require cracking up majority-minority communities specifically? Why not crack majority-white Democratic-leaning areas if this is purely about party? Even the majority-white urban counties with a significant propensity of the Democratic voters, the sponsor kept Hamilton County and Knox County whole. Why does the partisan map always look identical to what a racially motivated map would produce? Why are Nashville and Memphis, the two largest majority-minority urban centers in Tennessee, both cracked? Why is Nashville being redrawn a second time, not to fix a legal problem, but to enable Memphis's cracking? The answer to every one of those questions is the same, because the partisan goal and the racial goal are identical. The racial effect is not incidental to the partisan goal. The racial effect is the partisan goal. Now, the sponsor's argument rests on a foundational assumption that black people vote Democratic, that black voters and Democratic voters are the same thing, that cracking a majority black city is the same as cracking a Democratic city, and therefore partisan, not racial. That assumption has two problems, Mr. Speaker. The first problem is historical. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle love to remind us that it was Southern Democrats who enforced Jim Crow, that it was Southern Democrats who founded the Ku Klux Klan, that the parties have switched and therefore they are the party of Lincoln and we are the party of Bull Connor. But they only tell half the story. Yes, the parties did change, but let me tell you exactly when and why. Black Americans did not always vote Democratic. From the Civil War through the 1950s, black voters voted predominantly Republican, the party of Lincoln, the party of abolition, the party of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The shift began during the New Deal in the 1930s when Franklin Roosevelt's economic programs offered relief to black families devastated by the Great Depression. But the definitive realignment, the moment that made black Americans overwhelmingly Democratic, was in 1964. Not because anything Democrats did, because of what Republicans did. Barry Goldwater opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Republican Party, in its 1964 platform, positioned itself against federal civil rights enforcement. Richard Nixon launched the Southern Strategy in 1968, deliberately courting white Southern voters who were leaving the Democratic Party in reaction to civil rights legislation. The Republican Party made a deliberate strategic choice to build a coalition built on white racial resentment in the South. Sounds familiar. And black Americans respond rationally to that choice. So when my colleagues say that this is a partisan and not racial, I want them to understand what they are actually saying. They are saying that because their own party's history drove black voters to the Democratic Party, they are now entitled to use that partisan alignment as legal cover to eliminate black political representation. But here is the second and more devastating problem with the partisan argument. If this is truly about partisan advantage, if it's about 9-0, then I have a simple question. What does a 9-0 delegation give you that an 8-1 delegation does not? Tennessee's congressional influence is determined by seniority, by committee chairmanships in Congress, by leadership positions, relationships built with other members over decades. None of these things change with a 9th Republican seat. You already have 8 Republicans and 1 Democrat. You already have an overwhelming majority. A 9th Republican from a cracked Memphis seat will not be a powerful Republican in Congress. He or she will represent a gerrymandered, artificially constructed constituency, always competitive, always at risk, and never safe, weaker than the current incumbents who represent coherent communities. So what does a 9-0 actually give you? It gives you the permanent silencing of Shelby County's Black community. That is the only answer. That is the only thing that changes when you change this map. And if the only legislative purpose of a map is the permanent silencing of a specific racial community, that is not partisan gerrymandering. That is racial discrimination with a partisan cloak. Now let's talk about what this means for a person living in Memphis. For nearly 3 years of my career, I served as a congressional aide to former Congressman Jim Cooper in Tennessee's 5th Congressional District. I worked in his district office, answering the phones, sitting in on constituent meetings, people who came to us with their problems. So let me tell you what Memphis is about to lose when you crack this map into 3 districts. They will lose district offices, the physical place where constituents can walk in and off the street and talk to someone who works for the representative. They'll lose school visits, where congressmen show up and come talk to young people about public service, what the government does, about why their vote matters. They will lose someone to fight for federal funding for their hospitals, their schools, their roads, their nonprofits, their churches. They will also lose someone to call the Department of State when they are stranded in a foreign country during a global conflict and need to reach the nearest embassy. They'll lose someone to reach to expedite their passports. They'll lose someone to navigate the U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services to keep their green card. They will lose someone to write a recommendation to the West Point for a young man or woman who wants to serve this country.
Senator Oliver, you've exceeded the time. I'll give you a few seconds to wrap up.
These are not extractions. These are the daily grinding, unglamorous functions of congressional representation. That is the real cost of what this body is doing today. You call yourselves the party of law and order, but by calling a special session, you broke the law to change the law, to allow Donald Trump to continue being above the law. But you call yourselves people of faith. People of faith do not convene like this at the behest of a president who has been found liable of sexual abuse, who has been convicted of 34 felonies, who I've never seen profess Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, and who is waging a war in Iran that is driving up gas prices to $4 a gallon. You did not call us here for those things, to change the gas prices, tax relief. Tennessee is not a red state, Mr. Speaker. Tennessee is a gerrymandered state. We are a suppressed state. And today, y'all are proving my point.
Thank you, Senator Oliver. Senator Powers, you're recognized. Clear.
Ruben Diaz, I want to make sure that you are understanding what's happening right now. We've been following the conversation in Tennessee, in Nashville rather, about the redistricting map of the 9th Congressional District. Several speakers have been speaking up to this point in time. What happened just now was after the final speaker went over time, there seemed to be an outburst from the people that were protesting. You can now look at your screen right now and you see several of the Democratic senators in white standing in front of the aisles there. You see a sign, a makeshift sign being held up in the chamber as well. And there are a lot of protesters. So basically what has happened at this point is the microphones were cut off in the chamber, and then the sound was cut off in the chamber to the feed that we've been giving you all morning long. As soon as that sound comes back, as soon as they reconvene, it does seem like there is some sort of disturbance between the protesters outside the hall and then what was happening inside the hall. And that is what has caused this delay in this process. Now, what's happening today is it already passed the House. It is now being heard and argued in the Senate. You have speakers stepping up to give their thoughts on the redistricting and the redrawing of the map. And then eventually when all of those speakers are done being heard, they will actually vote on it. And once they vote, if it does get passed, which does seem like in all likelihood that it will, then that's when it will then move forward. But right now we are in some sort of a delay. Again, you could take a look at your screen and see that there appears to be several of the Democratic senators standing in front of the chamber desk there. And you can also see this is the map of how it will now be redrawn. Okay, so you can see the way the districts will have been redrawn. This is the map that has been voted on already in the House, that is waiting to be actually voted on in the Senate. We have been following this all morning long. We also have Lauren Turman up in Nashville, where she's been giving us reports throughout the day. We've been hearing from different leaders as well. But this has been an ongoing process for most of the morning. And right now we are in some sort of a pause just because of the outburst and the issue. Now, throughout this morning, while we've been listening to these speakers give their thoughts, and when we've been listening to these speakers give their thoughts, you could actually hear the protesters from the hall. And several times they were asked to keep the doors closed because it was too loud. They couldn't get the conversation started. They couldn't hear the questions and the answers. In fact, even Ramesh Akbari asked that the protesters try to keep it down a little so that they could get those questions in, because there were questions and answers that had to be done. Ramesh Akbari asking that of the protesters at some point in time during this whole conversation. Now, again, you're starting to hear some of this.
Senator Powers, you recognize.
All right, we're going back to the live now to the conversation. It seems like they've brought the speakers back up, but you can hear the protesters in the background. Let's listen in. It seems as though they have muted the sound again, and you can understand why. It would not surprise me if there was some sort of delay taken at some point in time, because those protesters are making it very difficult for the speakers to speak and ask their questions and give their thoughts. And so while the Democratic senators were speaking, you could slightly hear the protesters, but as soon as that ended and it started to go to a Republican speaker basically to the Republican speakers, you could hear the protesters get extremely loud. Now, we do have ABC 24's Lauren Turman, who's been in Nashville all morning, and she has been witnessing this. Let's join her now live with an update on what has been happening from her perspective. Lauren? All right, we're not going to listen to Lauren because obviously it's extremely loud out there, but you can see the protesters and you can hear. I'm gonna be quiet for a second and let you just hear what the amount of noise that the protesters are giving. This is right outside of the chamber. So obviously a very, very, very passionate protest happening just outside of that chamber hall, where they're trying to have those comments and conversations before the final vote in the Senate, in the state Senate. But you can see a large number of people there protesting, having their voice heard. That has been happening all morning long. And again, at this point, they have become so loud and so volatile with their voices, basically, that they've had to pause some of the speaking inside the actual chamber. We're going to try to take another look back inside the chamber and see if they're able to continue. It does appear as they're trying to get back to business. Let's listen in and see if they've actually got the sound out.
003. It's been properly seconded. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Let every member cast their vote.
No.
You have to be in your seat to vote. In your seat to vote. In your seat to vote. The rules.
ABC 24 News, breaking news now.
Ayes 25, nays 5.
House Bill 7003, having received a constitutional majority, I declare it passed. Next motion to reconsider is hereby tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk. Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the immediate introductions, or move for suspension of the rules for the immediate introduction and consideration of House Joint Resolution 7022, which calls for the adjournment of special session.
The motion is for the the motion is to suspend the rules for the immediate introduction of House Joint Resolution 7022. Properly seconded. Is there objection? I see no objection. The rules are suspended. Senator Johnson moves adoption of House Joint Resolution 7022. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. You adopt House Joint Resolution 7022. Leader Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please direct the clerk to notify the governor and the House of Representatives that the Senate has concluded its business.
The clerk is so notified. Leader Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Senate Journal of the proceedings from the first extraordinary day through the third extraordinary day of the second extraordinary session of the 114th General Assembly be approved.
That's a proper motion, properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. You adopt. Leader Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Joint Resolution 7022, I move the Senate adjourn sine die the second extraordinary session of the 114th General Assembly.
That's a proper motion, properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. You adopt. The Senate stands adjourned sine die.
All right, and there you have it. That session has just been adjourned and ended. House Bill 7003, so 7003, has officially passed. That means that the bill to redraw the district has officially passed the Senate and the House today in a vote of 25-5. The 5 noes were Senator Yarbrough, Senator Kyle, Senator Campbell, Senator London Lamar, and Senator Ramesh Akbari. Those were the 5 noes. 25-5, again, is the final vote in that Senate meeting today. All right, let's. You're taking a look right now at how the map's going to change, but let's go back outside of that chamber where the protests are happening right now. As again, this bill has just changed. This bill has just passed, and the Senate has just adjourned their business for the special session. And this is going to be an ongoing situation for several hours as people are outside of that chamber, extremely passionate about their voice being heard in this situation. Now, this is a historic day for Tennessee. There are some legalities involved with this as well that may come to pass at some point just because of the census and the timing of all this. Again, that's all stuff that may have to play out within a court. But as of right now, The Tennessee State Senate has passed the redrawing bill of the maps of the district. It had already passed the House, was now in the Senate after several speakers took the podium and took the microphone and gave their thoughts and their opinion and were basically pleading for Republicans to not vote for this. That did not happen. The 25-5 was the final vote here in this session. That means that the 9th Congressional District will be redrawn into that new version that we were able to show you earlier. There is a difference between the old map and the new map, and we will, again, over the next coming days, and of course later today as well, be able to give you a better idea of what that looks like and what that's going to mean for people here in Memphis and the Mid-South, and for what minority votes are going to look like here in Memphis and in the Mid-South. But again, the breaking news right now for you, that House Bill 7003 has officially passed, 25-5 vote in the state Senate. It is now official that the redistricting and redrawing of District 9 is going to be able to happen at this point in time. All right, we're going to stay on this here for a little while longer. We do have a reporter in the field. ABC 24's Lauren Turman is out in the field right now. And Lauren, can you get us caught up on what is happening right now that the vote has just passed?
Hear all of these protesters here behind me chanting as senators are coming out of the chamber after this bill has just passed. Again, it has now passed through the Tennessee House as well as the Tennessee Senate. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see exactly what is happening here right now. Everybody has got their phones out trying to document this historic moment as senators are being escorted out of the chamber. Again, just a few minutes ago, the bill has passed, this redistricting bill to reshape and redraw Tennessee's congressional map has passed. Now, I want to talk you through a little bit more of what I've heard today from some of the people who have been out here, and then what some of these lawmakers have been saying within their chambers. Now, several of the people out here say that this redistricting really eliminates black and minority voices in a community that has already historically been marginalized, specifically when it comes to voting, and in other ways as well. They have told me that they are all gathered here today trying to make a difference, trying to make their voices known, and really make sure that everybody knows that Tennessee stands strong. And they have told me that Tennesseans do not want for this to happen, and you can hear all of that right now. Again, as they are booing or cheering as lawmakers are coming out of the chamber. Now, earlier today, we heard from Representative Antonio Parkinson, who said that this is the time for the community to stand up, that this is just the beginning of a movement, and that they are expecting for lawsuit to follow in all of this. So that was immediate reaction after the House initially passed that bill. And then again, just a couple of minutes ago, we are hearing more from senators who say that Memphis and Shelby County specifically will really be feeling the impact of all of this. And they also told some really historical points about how the Memphis community has had to go through the civil rights era, how the Memphis community has had to fight for voting rights, how Memphians have really been standing strong and proud in moments like these and trying to come together and make sure that the nation knows that they are standing strong in all of this. And now, senators also echoed a lot of that same sentiment. But I also want to tell you a little bit more of the background of all of this and exactly what is happening within these districts. Under this newly approved map, District 9 as we know it now would be reshaped and expand into much of Middle Tennessee. They would also be divided between Districts 5, 8, and 9. So Memphis and Shelby County would be split into 3 different districts, and again, completely reshaped as we know it now. Of course, several other counties across the state of Tennessee are also being reshaped in all of this, and you can hear that booing as senators are leaving the chamber. Again, much of that is going towards Republican senators who have voted in favor of this redistricting plan here, and so they have been really trying to make sure they are outspoken when it comes to all of the policies that they are trying to get across in this manner. But I have seen several people talking to their constituents out here and really trying to get and understand more of the opinions, specifically on the Democratic side. I've seen quite a few Democratic representatives from the Memphis area talking to a lot of people out here and trying to understand more of their opinion. Now, just in terms of walking you through what exactly is happening here and what has happened over the past couple of years that makes this moment so historic, in 2022, there was a vote that happened to redistrict Republican majority. There were 8 Republican districts and 1 Democratic district. Of course, that's District 9. And now, of course, with this vote, this has turned into a completely Republican congressional map, and there are no more Democratic districts at this point under this plan. So, of course, during this moment, everybody is standing up. You see them here. They're trying to make their voices heard and telling the senators who voted against this how much it matters to them. Over the last 2 days here, we have really been hearing a lot from them about how this impacts families, how this impacts children, how Memphis has been such a significant target of legislation here recently. Of course, with the vote specifically towards Memphis and Shelby County schools, with the potential of the state oversight board, and then now this, they feel like Memphis is an unnecessary target, and specifically as a minority community in the Memphis and Shelby County area, they do feel as though this target is just another one in a long line of legislation against many of the citizens as well. And so, of course, now you can see all of these senators walking through, people raising their voices. We have seen this consistently over the past few days here as everybody is trying to take a stand and telling how they are feeling about this, telling their lawmakers how they are feeling about this in particular. And again, we are all witnessing a historic moment right now, but I am told from many people out here that this is just the beginning of their fight, that they are going to stand up, and more importantly, they hope this encourages other states that this may happen to, specifically southern states, to stand up and encourage everybody to make sure that they have a voice, to make sure their voices are heard, and to make sure that everybody knows they are standing together in the entirety of this fight. We've heard words like shame on you. We've heard things like abuse of power. You see it written on some people's signs. You also see messages specifically to certain senators, to certain representatives as well. All of them trying to make their voices heard. Now, we do expect for there to be a House Democratic Caucus press conference that immediately follows this as soon as they can safely clear everybody out of that area. And these protesters are telling you that they are not going anywhere. They will certainly be here throughout the entirety of the day to stand in support and solidarity with one another. And of course, we will bring that to you as soon as we have it. But for now, live in Nashville, I'm Lauren Turman, ABC 24 News.
All right, thank you, Lauren, for that. Obviously, very difficult to hear her because of the amount of protests going on right now. We are going to continue our coverage on this Senate, but for that you can head to our streaming app, which is 24 Plus. We're going to get off of our normal program and get you back to a normal regular program. But again, you can continue to watch this coverage on 24 Plus, which is our streaming app. You can download it by texting the word app to 901-321-7520. Again, we're heading right back over there right now.
Actually hear my voice because they kept acting like they couldn't. I mean, well, they were like, hold, but I was like, I literally.
All right, thank you for continuing to stay with us here on ABC 24 Plus. We are obviously covering the historic day in Nashville at that special session where the State Senate has just voted 25-5 to approve the redrawing of the district maps here in Tennessee, which includes here in the Mid-South, which changes District 9 and kind of completely alters the makeup of that district. You have been taking a live look at the protests outside of the chamber, of the Senate chamber. We can go back to that any second now and give you an idea of what that looks like for people who are up there right now in Nashville from all across the state. We noticed there some of the senators mentioned there were people from Knoxville and Memphis and Nashville and surrounding cities, all there in support of not voting for this bill. So our Lauren Turman is there in Nashville, and she has been trying to give us reports, but it has been extremely loud outside of the chamber hall, so it's been very difficult to hear her. Now, this is going to give you an idea of what we're talking about when it comes to the changing, the redrawing of the maps. At the top of your screen, you can see the previous maps and how it was laid out. Okay, and then there at the bottom, the second map, you can see what the new version will look like and how the districts are broken up and altered and changed, particularly there in the middle of the state, and what that's going to do to the voting districts in several areas and what that's going to mean for voters in several areas. So again, this is all happening in the last 15 to 20 minutes. After speakers were done speaking, the protesters got extremely loud when it was almost time, when it was time to get ready to take the vote. They had to take a small delay while they tried to get things under control. Then eventually they did take the vote in the Senate, and it was a 25-5 vote. 25 in favor, 5 against. The 5 that were against it, Senator Yarbrough, Senator Kyle, Senator Campbell, Senator Lamar, and Senator Akberry, all going against this vote for the redistricting and redrawing of the map. Again, we are going to continue to follow this all day long. It is just now happening and just now taking place, and we'll continue to get reaction. We will look for reaction. Again, Lauren Turman is there, and we have been able to take live looks at the protesters, and we were able to watch that vote happening in real time. But at this point, it is so loud in that protest, in that hall, in the Senate hall, outside of the chamber, that you just cannot hear a live report coming from her. So again, we'll stay with this for a few more minutes while we figure out if we're able to get back there and what we're able to do. Again, we can take a look at kind of how this started, kind of get you caught up on where we're from beginning to end to how we got here. Let's take a look back a little bit at how it started. It started with a special session that was called last Friday by Governor Bill Lee after President Trump was pushing lawmakers to create a Republican seat following a landmark Supreme Court ruling that was in Louisiana. It struck down a majority black congressional district. The court claimed that the current map relied too heavily on race as voters tended to favor Democrats, thereby affecting the balance of power in Congress. The move then weakens the Voting Act's law, which primarily ended the discriminatory practices against black voters that were prevalent in a lot of states at that time. Now, again, that's how it started, but there's been an ongoing cycle up to this point, right? So we went from the special session being called or being asked for, President Trump even coming out saying that he wanted this to get done. Then the special session was actually called. It actually was started on Tuesday, which was the voting day for the primaries, which was a little bit distressful for some people. So the session started then. Initially, there were two versions of a map that they were having trouble agreeing on. Then it eventually passed the House, and then from the House then moved to the Senate, and then today passed the state Senate as well. So it is now officially it has passed both the House and Senate and will move to the governor's desk, but it is officially going to go through at this point because all signs point to this being the new norm for at least the short term. There are some legalities that go with this as well as far as the timing of this. There's some concern that whether or not this is actually legal based on the current census and when redrawing is supposed to be able to take place. So we're going to go back to the live protest here for just a second to give you an idea. We're not going to put the sound up because it is pretty loud, but you can get an idea if you just look at your screen there. You can see the number of people. They've been chanting things like abuse of power, shame on you, and some other words as well. Obviously, we've seen some hand signals of disapproval. We've seen a lot of passion, to say the least, during this protest. And it got so loud at points that during the actual voting and during the actual speaking portion in the Senate, where Democratic senators were trying to give their plea to Republican senators not to vote for this, at times, they were interrupted by how loud the protesters were in the hall. just outside of the chamber, at several times having to stop, even ask the protesters to maybe keep it down so that they could get through the process of business, because they still had to get through the process to even get there. And there were several questions that were needing to be asked and answers that certain senators were looking for when it came to why the maps were drawn this way, what was in the mindset of the person who was coming up with the bill, the author of the bill, during this process. So there were questions that needed to be answered that they were having trouble getting that done just because of the volume of the protesters. I know we're going to try to stay here for a while. I know we're hoping to get some reaction from some of the lawmakers that are in Nashville with Lauren Turman, but again, it is so loud in that hall with those protesters that I don't know that you'll be able to hear anybody at that point. I know Lauren commented that she had the microphone right by her mouth and still you could not hear a word that she was saying. So again, just to reset for everybody, the redistricting map bill has now passed both the House, the State House, and the State Senate. And this is going to give you an idea of what the new map is going to look like. If you look at your screen, it is very different from what it currently is right now. And so the new map, as you can see, encompasses larger portions of the middle of the state. Some of the other outlying districts remain the same, but it really is a heavy change in District 8 and 9, particularly in District 9, because of the width and look at how long and how large those two districts end up becoming and where they change to and where they go. Now, the color scheme is a little bit off for you. So on your screen, it may look like 8 and 9 is one district, but it's not. 8 is a little bit of a shade of a blue, and 9 has a little bit of a turquoise underneath it. And that's going to give you an idea of where those two districts are going to be now and how they're changed and how they're split up. Again, we heard from several lawmakers, several state senators today, several people making their case. Throughout this week, we've been hearing that since Tuesday. I believe Stacey Abrams was even in Nashville this week making her case for why this was not something that would be good for the state of Tennessee. You've been able to hear, we were able to hear from several senators today as they made their case, asking their colleagues not to vote for this. But at the end of the day, that's not what happened. You can, again, take another live look at the protests outside the hall right there. And during this time, the actual final vote here, 25-5. 25 in favor, 5 against this bill, which has now passed and will, in effect, change the voting districts here in Memphis and in the Mid-South Shelby County. So you'll have to bear with us as all of this unfolds. We'll continue to get new information and get reaction from lawmakers and people here within the Shelby County area who this is going to directly impact, to get an idea of how they're feeling about this. But this just took place, just finalized over the last 30 minutes when lawmakers were able to finally vote. So again, this gives you a little bit closer look at the districts than what you're looking at. There's 9 down there in that kind of light orange or light orange color. 8 there is next to it. And look at the change. That's a change in what 9 is going to look like. 4 and 5 also had some alterations. Again, this is some video of some of the conversations, some of the speeches that have been having over the last couple of days while people were trying to get this bill to not pass. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So as we wrap up this coverage, we will continue to cover this throughout the day and again tonight during our news at 5, 6, and 10. But to summarize it all for you right now before we let you go, the bill has now passed the State House and State Senate to redraw the districts here in the Mid-South, including District 9, which is a predominantly black district, and it will now change potentially the makeup of voters in that district. All right, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us during all of this coverage. We will continue to bring you more. Make sure to join us at 5, 6, and 10 for the very latest on this breaking news. I'm Ruben Diaz.